Hi, this is Eddie Hearn, and you're watching Lights Out.
Frank Warren and Queensberry Promotions absolutely smash Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing. Queensberry 10, Matchroom 0. Frank Warren has done the unthinkable. Eddie Hearn, Barry Hearn, Anthony Joshua, snooker, darts, anyone associated with Matchroom Boxing, your boys have taken a hell of a beating. A hell of a beating. This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law. And this is podcast 80 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. Delighted to be joined by my right-hand man, one of my good friends, and a man that likes to consider himself as the face of Lights Out Boxing, Mr. Mohsin Gulsher, a.k.a. Ron. Ronald, how you doing, mate?
Very good, very good. I thought with your intro, I thought there was going to be a bit of a Jason Cundy impression.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyone seen Eddie Hearn? Your boys have taken one hell of a beating. Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Gardens, Andy Joshua, the Zone. Your boys took one hell of a beating. Andy Joshua, Frank Smith, can you? Look, before we get started with today's podcast,
to rub it in is Jason Cundy. I'm going to give it to him. I love him as well. I think he's great, but yeah, when it's your team that's been on a wrong end of a hiding like that, then Matchroom want to find a sand and just bury their head deep into that after that, but a shutout performance. But
absolutely, and that's obviously going to be the main talking point in today's podcast. And before we do get started with today's podcast, just a few quick friendly reminders. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment, and smash the bell for more Lights Out Boxing content. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. Links are below in the description. We are proudly sponsored by the #1 Spartans Law, the #1 law firm in the UK. So if you need that representation in and out of the courtrooms, check our sponsors out. Their website is below in the description. And this podcast is available to you on all audio platforms, including Spotify. Ron, we're going to get started with the podcast. Do you know what? It's funny. It's quite funny because we actually forgot to do the quick fire question in podcast 79. So apologies to the fans out there. Ron, what is today's quick fire question? Hit me with it.
Right. So I think I know we're going to talk in depth about it, the event that happened, Matchroom versus Queensberry. But we can all agree that the matchmaking was great. It was competitive fights. Obviously there's some knockouts that we saw, but they were evenly matched on paper. We didn't know what was going to come out, what was the outcome going to be. And, there's some exceptional kind of performances and great knockouts, which we're going to talk about. So my question, it's in relate to that. In your opinion, what is the worst boxing matchup you have seen? What I mean by that is it could be that a team or a management or a promoter has overlooked and thought, oh yeah, this should be an easy performance for their fighter, but let alone, they didn't know what was going to happen on the night. So what do you think in boxing? Because obviously it's about making the fights at the right time for your fighter. You get them progressing up the ranks, but you've got to do it gradually. So, but anyway, what comes to your mind when you think about the worst matchup that they've done in boxing? That comes to your mind.
Josh Kelly versus David Avanesian's got to be one of them. That was an absolute brutal beatdown. That was during lockdown, and I just thought they took that fight way too early. Look, I mean, it's done Josh Kelly the world of good. Since that, he's not lost, and he's moved on to that next level. But I just thought Josh Kelly, David Avanesian was a complete mismatch. Another one was the guy Frazier Clark fought on his debut. I believe he was a last-minute replacement, and he come out and said after the fight that he only took that fight because he knew he was going to get a free ticket to watch Kell Brook versus Amir Khan. But funny story that. But yeah, definitely have to go with David Avanesian and Josh Kelly, a complete mismatch. And that was tough to watch that night. I remember that fight. What about yours?
One that comes to my mind straight away when I thought of this question is Amir Khan versus Bradis Prescott. Gone in 60
No, but
seconds.
Ron, I don't think.
No,
Ron, it was just.
I don't know what they were thinking. You know, they had an up and coming. Yeah, I mean, Amir Khan was exciting, but you've got to do baby steps. That was wrong, bad management. Clearly the coach that he had at the time went after that fight as well. Clearly they knew the coach, you know, who picked that fighter to fight against. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you could put that down to bad management. He got caught with a shot.
You've got to remember. You've got to see leading up to that fight. Amir Khan looked vulnerable with, you know, getting shot, dropped on the floor. These are against lower levels, and then you're going in against a knockout artist at the time, which was Bradis Prescott. You know, he was. I'm sure he was undefeated, but his you know, knockout ratio was ridiculously high, and I don't know what they were thinking. And you know, he's South American as well, so you know he's going to bang. He's going to be up for it. He's got nothing to lose. And it turned, you know, Amir Khan's, you know, career at that point upside down. And, you know, and credit to him, you know, he's recovered from that. Two-time world champion. But I think that was probably mismanaged. You know, he was wrong. Another one that comes to my mind, it was I can't remember who Manny Pacquiao was fighting, but he was unheard of, unknown back then. He was fighting for a world title, and Manny Pacquiao just absolutely blitzed him. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm just watching that fight again. Yeah.
I can't really agree with your Khan Prescott. I just think there's a thing down to inexperience, and I guarantee had there been a rematch, Khan would have won, because look what Khan went on to achieve, and look what Prescott went on to achieve.
True, but you've got to really think about making those fights at the right time, or maybe they were underestimating what Prescott would be able to do. Clearly, he did, you know, and he caught him cold.
It was a lucky punch. But how many lucky punches did fighters catch Amir Khan with throughout his career? Look, great question as always, Ron. Really appreciate it. I'd love to get the viewers' thoughts in the comment section. But we've got a lot to talk about today. We've got a historic night of boxing to look back on. Saturday night, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And listen, for many years, we called for some sort of concept like this, where you get two promoters with their best fighters facing off against each other. And I've got to say, do you know what? I didn't miss an absolute second of it last night, and I just thought it was so good for boxing that we finally witnessed that type of concept. Massive shout out to Turki Alalshikh, massive shout out to Frank Warren Queensberry Promotion, Eddie Hearn Matchroom, and of course a massive shout out to all the fighters. I thought every fight was spectacular from start to finish, you know. And there's a saying, you know, the more tougher it is to call a fight, the better the fight is. And every fight was just brilliant. Straight 50-50 down the middle. You know, it was hard to pick a favorite. It was even hard to pick a clear winner going into the fights on Saturday night. Ron, we'll obviously talk about the fights, and we'll review fight by fight. But how good is it for boxing that promoters have taken that step further, given us a show like that? And what does this mean for the future of boxing?
Can only mean positive things. That look, we have now worked together. We've made a massive success of it. Long may that continue. Let's look for other opportunities down the line where we can make boxing more lucrative and compete with UFC. That was one of the major kind of critiques that people were having against boxing, that look, the best are not fighting the best. Oh, just because they're in different promotional companies, they won't deal with each other. Oh, it's a bit of a, it just becomes long-winded to get that fight, and it just comes, and those fights happen far too late. So I think this is a beginning of something beautiful for going forward with boxing. I think they were speaking about kind of doing things going forward. Turki Alalshikh was kind of mentioning that at the end of the night as well, that he's been having good positive conversations with Eddie Hearn, and I'm really excited about what those those conversations are and what we've got in store for Riyadh season next season. When I understand in September they've got a show lined up with Anthony Joshua headlining. Could that and which we'll talk about his potential opponent, which we can probably work out who it is. Well, let's wait and see. But they've done Turki Alalshikh's done a fantastic job. And I'm glad in my lifetime I'm getting to see these fights. I'm not going to be like, ooh, having these hypotheticals and sitting there with my children and mentioning these two were great fighters, and then saying, well, Dad, did they ever fight each other? No. But at least now we're getting those fights, and and Frank Warren has got, I mean, I'm sure his smile couldn't get any bigger now. He's got one over Eddie Hearn, but they've kind of realized that they're doing a good thing for boxing, and the fans are coming together now. It's not like, oh, it's one or the other. Now it's like, well, actually they're combined. So long may it continue.
Do you know what, Ron? You summed it up brilliantly. We're such a good thing to see us getting these true 50-50 fights, these sort of rivalry promotions fighting against each other. An unbelievable night of boxing. And there's a part of me that's actually quite sad that Riyadh season is now over, because if you go back to last year when they announced Fury and Ngannou, there's so much negativity surrounding it, and I know me and you weren't happy with Fury and Ngannou, and rightfully so, and everybody slated it, but I just think it kick-started what has been a phenomenal 9 to 12 months in Riyadh. I mean, we've had the undisputed heavyweight world title fight. We've had Anthony Joshua fight a few times. We've had stacked cards. We've had faces turn up to these events that you wouldn't think you'd see at a boxing event, and there's so much more to look forward to. Obviously, you've got the big card coming up in America, which features Terence Crawford and fighters like Andy Ruiz and Jarrell Miller. And then we're all hearing about a potential stack card in Wembley, which will be main evented by AJ. But I just think last night was kind of like the icing on the cake, because we got what we wanted. We wanted to see who was the best promoter in terms of their fighters, and a fantastic night of boxing, and a night that we're going to look back on forever and think, wow, it took that long for it to happen, but it was worth the wait. We'll start with fight number 1, Ron. Willy, the Hutch-trained Hutchinson, beating Craig the Spider Richards to put Queensberry 1-0 up on the night. I thought that was a boxing masterclass by Willy Hutchinson. I thought that he'd struggled to deal with Richards' power. I thought that the spotlight might have been a bit too big for him. But you know what I saw last night, Ron? I saw a better version of Ben Whittaker in the ring last night. He was absolutely phenomenal from start to finish. Yeah, he might have taken a couple of rounds off in round 10 and 11. I just thought it was a phenomenal performance from Willy Hutchinson last night.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it was a really good performance. I had that fight as a draw because I couldn't pick a winner out of the two. If I was going to pick out a winner, probably Craig Richards, because I just think he's more of a well-known name in boxing, considering who he's been in the ring with. But hats off to him. I think and I'm glad there was no controversy around when announcing the winner. You could see how much it meant to him. I thought he fought a really good fight. Did things very cleverly. Just didn't allow. I don't know. I think from watching, Craig Richards couldn't really get into the fight at all. It's only towards the end that he was landing more punches, but he tallied up the difference going into the last round. So he did all the good work. So really, really happy for him. The Hutch train. So maybe let's see that kind of train kind of continuing on its journey, and for bigger fights now. So well done to him.
There's a lot of question marks on Willy Hutchinson. I mean, especially they go back to that defeat against Lennox Clark in lockdown, and that was when he was campaigning at 168 pounds, the super middleweight division. And they asked him about that defeat, and he said, "Look, I had a lot of stuff going on in my private life leading up to that fight." Sure. And it was pretty clear that he'd outgrown the division. He was struggling to make weight. I believe at that time he was still with Dominic Ingle. But I think he's a different fighter at light heavyweight. And he caused a lot of noise, probably caused the most noise out of everyone during fight week. And he really put the pressure on him. And he was obviously very confident. He had a lot of back and forth with Craig Richards, saying that he's a level above him and that he was going to put him unconscious. So he put himself under a lot of pressure, and listen, he absolutely flourished last night. Now, there's a lot of talk about a potential fight with Ben Whittaker, who is in that same division and is kind of like the same sort of boxer in terms of their style and showcasing and their skills that they have. Now, look, the guys that won last night have more or less kind of put themselves available for the next step of their career. And I'm hearing a lot of talk about Craig Richards versus Ben Whittaker, who obviously fights next on the Billam Smith React card. Is that a fight? If you're Ben Shalom right now, Ron, do you make that fight? Obviously, if Ben Whittaker comes through his test on the Billam Smith React undercard.
I'd like to say yes now, because obviously we're living in an age where these great fights are getting made. But Ben Shalom is not as trigger happy.
No, it's not.
To these other promoters, as we can agree on. Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren are putting their fighters up against each other. They're putting them into tough tests, and Riyadh has been great, for accommodating that.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Shalom, I don't know. Does he want to still? He's done it with Fraser Clark the first time round. Thank God we got that fight. He's done that with Adam Azim potentially with that fight against Dalton Smith. So you can. I hope you can understand my reluctancy there. That I would love to see it. I'm not going to say no to that. Based on that performance and the showboating and the style, and it'll be like mirror image of each other, aren't they? Like who's gonna fool each other first? Those two in the ring. But look, credit to them. You mentioned about Willy Hutchinson, and looking back at in lockdown when he lost that fight. But this is an event like this. And a win against a credible opponent like Craig Richards is springboarded him. He's done some massive favors for his career, and I hope he can really kick on. And he's made some massive improvements in his game. So, and these are people we don't hear about. I didn't really know much about Willy Hutchinson. It's only when the 5v5 undercard was made, I started doing some research, looking at BoxRec, and watching a few fights of his. Now he's a household name, and I hope he can really push on from that. That's my hope for him, and hope Eddie, the Frank Warren and his team will think carefully about who they match him up next with. But in regards to Ben Whittaker, how long do you sit on that? You've got to put him in with tougher fights, people who are going to fight back, people who are going to throw in a bit of a feint or do silly antics that Ben Whittaker does. Ben Whittaker is clearly overmatched against his opponents right now. So that's, he's a big fish in a little pond.
Mm-hmm.
You need to put him in with the bigger fish, and see how he swims there. So I can only hope. I know I haven't directly answered your question, but I can only hope that we see Ben Whittaker, in the next end of this year, maybe early next year, getting into these bigger fights where it's not going to be a foregone conclusion that he's going to win and he's going to dance around and look pretty doing it. So hopefully it'll be someone with substance that he's fighting. Who's he fighting on? I'm not too familiar with.
Let's find the African guy that called him out during the Fraser Clark Fabio Wardley press conference. So there's a bit of needle there.
There's a bit of needle there, but look, is that guy just making noise because he wants to be relevant, or has he got something that he's got something to shout about?
We'll find out on fight night.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I hope this guy lives up to the clamor, of that, the noise he's making. So, but let's see.
Well, that is a great fight, and it's a fight that I'd love to see at some point in the future. That win for Willy Hutchinson made it 1-0 to Queensberry. Now we obviously move on to the review of fight number 2. Nick Ball beating Raymond Ford to capture the featherweight title. And listen, I think the Nick Ball story is only just beginning now. We saw what happened when he fought Vargas on the Joshua Ngannou card. Reyes. Yes. Yeah. And he got absolutely robbed. But this time round, I thought that fight with Raymond Ford is what I'd like to label as a proper phone box fight. It was an absolute featherweight classic.
Yeah.
Do you know what? This kid, Nick Ball, I just love everything about him. He had obviously a few moments when it looked as if the fight was going to go away from him, but he put on a tremendous performance last night. against a great fight in Raymond Ford, who Eddie Hearn throughout fight week said he's the best 126-pounder in the world. You know, that he's going to shine. And, you know, his last fight he won with, 7 seconds remaining, and that we were going to see a better version of Raymond Ford. I thought Raymond Ford was really, really good last night, considering the fact that he was quite behind on the scorecards. He did very well to come back into the fight. But Nick Ball did enough to nick it in the end. The Wrecking Ball, that's what they're calling him. I've nicknamed him the Little Mike Tyson. Every time I see him fight, it just reminds me of a smaller and a younger version of Mike Tyson. You know, he's so relentless. I mean, his energy is just on another level. And it looked like he even broke his nose halfway through the fight last night. But this is how tough the guy is. You know, he somehow managed to overcome that and still went on to win the fight in an absolute classic. I'd love to see it again. That it will happen again. So I do believe Raymond Ford now will go up in weight. But Ron, not only was it a good thing for Queensberry, but how good was it to see Nick Ball finally capture the world title, given the fact what happened in his last fight?
Absolutely excited for him. I was flicking between that fight and the Champions League. And then I made it, me and my brother, we were watching it and we made an executive decision. I'll go, look, I'm following it on BBC Sport, and this is looking like a cracker.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at the last 9 or from round 8 onwards, we just watched this and it was great. You know, it was a great, and Nick Ball showed a plenty of cojones. You know, he showed he has a great chin. His work rate is excellent. The volume of punches, you know, it's, you know, yeah, I think they both fought a very good tactical fight. You know, you could see what they were trying to do, you know, trying to get in with their, you know, the footwork was really interesting to see. Now that front foot, you know, the positioning of that, the jab, getting in there first. I think that's what I heard a lot in the Raymond Ford corner, that you need to beat him to the punch. You know, you need him to, you know, and the fight kind of went in waves. You know, at some point, you know, Nick Ball was on top, and then he took a few shots, and you thought, oh God, you know, Raymond turning, you know, the tide here, you know, but that showed his experience. And Raymond Ford, I mean, his last fight against Kolmatov with barely a few seconds to survive, and he, you know, and he produced that. You knew he had it in him to turn a fight around. And, you know, there's a bit of controversy. Did you agree with the scorecard? Do you think, you know, that was the right winner announced? I mean, some people
you know, I did, because when we done our last podcast, we were obviously talking about how you score around. Do you go in favor of the guy that's landing more punches, or do you go in favor of the guy that's landed the more clean and effective punches? And I'm all for going for the guy that's landing more punches. I just think work rate beats, you know, a punch that stands out in any round of boxing, in my opinion. Unless it's a knockout punch, then you can't obviously go against a 10-8 round.
The accuracy was there from, he threw fewer punches, but the accuracy was there from Ford. But
well, I just think Nick Ball landed the more better punches, and I thought he was having more success. And one thing I really like about Nick Ball, and you know, you might think, fucking hell, you know, you're off your head. Every time Raymond Ford was landing, he was urging Raymond Ford to come forward. He kept on punching his chest. He kept on telling him to come on, bring it, come forward, give me more. That's what I love about this kid. And I honestly think,
a great chin on him. Yeah.
And I think Frank Warren has got an absolute pit bull on his hands here. There is so much you can do with Nick Ball. He's still young as well.
That's my question. Where does he go from here then? And Nick Ball,
well, there's look.
He's got a world title around his shoulders.
I love the fight with Lee Wood. I love the fight with Lee Wood. I like the fight with Josh Warrington. I think these are great fights, and these are both matchroom fighters. So if we are going to get another 5 versus 5 card, we don't know what's going on with Wood and Warrington. But if you're making another 5v5 card for, I don't know, perhaps the end of this year or early 2025,
Wood's still got a title?
Yeah, Lee Wood has got the gold title. There you go. Match made in heaven.
Yeah. So they both got something to bring to the table, and wow, that would be a great tear up. I mean, him against Warrington, both.
Do you know what, Ron? I'm not saying this because obviously the guy has been so impressive. I think he absolutely gets the better of Wood and Warrington right now. I just can't see nobody beating this guy. You know, Raymond Ford, you know, if you obviously watch the Americans fight on DAZN and you follow their careers the way I try to, Raymond Ford is no slouch. He's going to go up to 130 pounds. He's going to unify there. He's going to dominate that division. But for Nick Ball to give him that type of fight, and especially with a suspected broken nose midway through the fight and still come out victorious.
Has Nick Ball had? Is that his 14th fight or something?
Something like that, yeah.
It's like he's...
He is an opponent's worst nightmare because that style of his, you know, how do you tame that style? You know, how do you manage to beat a fighter like Nick Ball? Look, there'll be a guy out there that might have the answers for him, but I just think because of how good his tank is and because of how relentless he is, I honestly think Frank Warren has got a real winner on his hands here, and I cannot wait to see what they do next with him. So that put Queensberry 2-0 up, Ron. Now, Hamzah Sheeraz fought next against Ammo Williams. And this is where the tournament got really interesting because if Hamzah Sheeraz had won that fight by knockout or by points, it was double points for the captain. So this is at the point where you're thinking Matchroom really need to pull one back here. They need to do like a Liverpool against AC Milan in Istanbul of 2005 or Liverpool versus Barcelona in 2019. You know, I can't think of any Man United great comebacks that people talk about, so we won't refer them to this. And Hamzah Sheeraz knocked out Ammo Williams. He got double points. And I've got to say, I thought it was a career best performance from Hamzah Sheeraz. Ron, credit to Ammo Williams because I thought he fought a very good fight. And he nearly got him out there in the early stages of the fight. And he had quite a bit of success. But what has that experience done for Hamzah Sheeraz last night? And what does it do for him going forward in the next step of his career?
I'd like to talk a little bit about his performance. I totally agree with you there that he had to come through a bit of a challenging time. Was it round 2 where his legs were unsteady? But I thought Hamzah Sheeraz's defense was excellent. You know, how he was really tight in kind of, you know, he was taking a lot of shots, but they were all on the arms, on the gloves. And it was very compact. And that jab, wow. I was watching that fight and they mentioned someone else who's got an amazing jab with Larry Holmes. It was like an advert or something. And I was like, wow, yeah, I can see that. That jab he used that to really good effect. He set up, you know, the double jab, set it up really nicely, kind of, you know, throwing that right hand in. Everything came off that jab. And the tactics were perfect, were spot on. You know, keeping that distance, that range, you know, you fight to your strengths. And that's what their corner was saying, that you need to get on the inside. You just slip, you know, easier said than done. You know, Hamzah Sheeraz showed us another kind of, you know, a level of his kind of his repertoire of, you know, his skills set. Thoroughly enjoyed that performance. And he really broke down Ammo Williams. You know, Ammo Williams, credit where it's due because he put a lot into that fight, and you know, for lasting as long as he was throwing a lot of punches, but they weren't landing, and that was credit to how Hamzah was covering up. And even when they were on the inside, he just let him throw as many punches, and Hamzah Sheeraz would kind of out of nowhere throw a uppercut, and that would get his attention, and then he would kind of start off from there. But you know, this boy, you know, he's 25 years of age. He came off a career best performance against Liam Williams. He's outdone that now, which we can agree on, against an impressive Ammo Williams with a good record. What next?
Yeah, well, this is it. There's a lot of people that are talking about a potential fight with Chris Eubank Jr. He's now the WBC #1 mandatory. You know, what do you do next with him? Just obviously a quick word on his performance. He used the range well. I thought defensively after round 4 he improved, and the way he improved and how quickly he improved was really, really impressive. Especially after taking, I wouldn't say a lot of punishment, but he was troubled a lot, especially in that second round. And I like how he sort of, you know, regathered himself, you know, and he gained momentum going into the later rounds of the fight. The jab, as you said, spot on. He was, you know, the uppercut was brilliant. And I said that the key to this fight would be is keeping Ammo Williams at range. And I think after round 5, Ammo Williams just become target practice in the end.
Ran out of ideas for me.
Ran out of ideas. I mean, listen, I got a lot of respect for Hamzah Williams, and Francis Warren said on an interview last night, there's something about Hamzah Williams, and I agree. And I think, if anything, Hamzah Williams is gonna, he's gonna take a lot away from that fight, and he's only gonna get better. And I still have him down as a very, very good fight. Having said that, I just believe Hamzah Sheeraz last night proved he was a level above. And what do you do next with him? Chris Eubank Jr. hasn't fought since last year. He hasn't fought since last year. We spoke about ring inactivity. Now, there's a big card coming up in September. We're hoping. Obviously, it will be headlined by Anthony Joshua in Wembley. What more could you ask for a co-main event than Hamzah Sheeraz and Chris Eubank Jr.? We know Turki Alalshikh can make the fight happen. We know the funds are there.
They like Hamzah. They like Hamzah Sheeraz.
They do.
Yeah. I think he could become a real big star, being of Saudi Arabia, Muslim faith. You can see that marketability that they can. So there's a spot there that Hamzah Sheeraz could make his own. And feature regularly in these kind of events at Riyadh season. So.
Well, obviously, that's what we talk about, what we're doing next with him. So do you think the next move is go for the WBC title? Or do you think...
Well, if he fights Chris Eubank, then there's no... there's no title on the line. I mean...
No, there's not. But it's a big domestic clash, and it's a great fight. And it's a fight that could headline any arena right now. So what would you do? Are you in favour of him going for the WBC title next? Or do you think the fight with Eubank Jr. is something that he should really consider?
Either or. They're both going to make him a very rich man, and he's got the world ahead. The world is his oyster right now. He's hot. He's come off 2 top performances. After the Bradley Skeet performance, there was a lot of question marks on him, but Liam Williams on his record, Hamzah Williams on his record, 2 knockouts. This boy is showing his repertoire of his skills. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. We've got a world title. Could he clean up the division? Possibly. Let's wait and see. Let's see how he gets on with his next big test. But I wouldn't be against him being in for a world title shot. But that seemed to be for a world title shot. Or is it there's a
WBC final eliminator. There's another fight I really, really like, and that's Hamzah Sheeraz, Liam Smith. I mean, that's a great fight. I think it's another great fight for him. If I'm Hamzah Sheeraz right now, I'm looking at the Liam Smith fight, and if it's offered to me, I would take that fight in a heartbeat. Because I do think now, he's beating kind of just below world level. Now I think he has to go for world level in his next fight, or either that or go for a world title shot. But a great performance, and him obviously winning by knockout was double points. It earned Matchroom, it earned Queensberry a total of 4 more points. It put them 6-0 up, and that meant that Matchroom could not win the series. All they could do is tie the series. And Eddie Hearn turned around and said that all is not lost. We've still got a chance. We could still tie the series. And I'd leave Riyadh a happy man if we could tie the series. But that wasn't to be the case, because Daniel Dubois came in and completely finished off Matchroom boxing by beating Filip Hrgovic. In what was a great heavyweight tear-up. And Ron, I've got to say this, I think that's the making of Daniel Dubois now. I think he's done all of his homework. He's done his apprenticeship. We've learned a lot from him from the 2 defeats against Joyce and Usyk. I just honestly believe now the kid's going to go one way and he's not going to look back. Is it fair to say, Ron, that Daniel Dubois is now a part of... Should he be? Does he belong in that discussion with the Furies, the Usyks, the Joshuas, and the Parkers? Is he amongst those fighters now that could potentially become the number 1 guy in the division?
He's one below that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you've got the Furies, the Joshuas, the Usyks. Who else do you want to put in there? I mean, if you can think of someone else, that's
Parker.
That's a tier of its own.
Zhang.
Then you've got a tier. No. I'm thinking that there's a tier below that, and that's no disrespect to them, but you've got to give those 3 their props, because they're world title holders. two-time world champion in, you know, Anthony Joshua, Usyk's undisputed, Fury is, you know, Fury. So those boys just that tier below, and that's because they've set the bar so high. But look, put that aside. I think Dubois, that was coming of age for Dubois. He's had his controversy, not controversy, but his moments where you questioned his heart. You know, does he really? But you know, you look who he's lost against. He's lost against, you know, Joyce, who was in the top three. You know, that conversation that you were having earlier, just about the top end. We put Joyce in there, and he lost against him, and you know, these things happen. Then he came again, another world title, you know, this time for a world title, and he gave Usyk a really good, you know, really good run for his money. And he dropped him, you know, and whatever you want to say. But then there was obviously question marks on his chin, his heart. Jarrell Miller, great performance. He showed all of those cojones. He showed he had a gas tank. He finished him, stopped him in round 12. And then this performance, you know, he did remarkably well. You know, he took shots, he gave shots, he boxed really well. And credit to him, man. You know, he was, and I think he really deserved that. You know, he's one of those guys that he's a nice guy. You know, he's not known for his lip or giving, you know, outrageous kind of. He's quite he's quite the contrary, isn't it? You know, he's very, very dull, and you know, maybe he needs a bit of extra media training. But look, the guy's 26 years old, and you know, look what he's achieved so far. You know, he's not even at his peak yet. I don't know when heavyweights peak. So there's a generation. He's the next generation. Obviously, Usyk's and Furies and Joshua's are not going to be around forever. There's going to be someone who's going to pass on the back, you know, take over.
Every baby has a daddy, and I'm going to beat you like I'm your daddy. Yeah, look, there is a few things to brush up on in terms of the personality, but I've met Daniel Dubois loads of times. Really nice guy.
Yeah.
Look, some people just have it with the mic, some people don't. That's just the way the sport is. But I was really impressed with him last night. And like Hamzah Sheeraz, he was troubled earlier on in the fight. He rode through it, you know, gained a second wind and completely dominated after round 4. Just,
what happened, you know, with Hrgovic? That wasn't.
I mean, look, did he receive cuts to both eyes?
Some really bad gashes around the, you know, where the eyebrow is.
Let's just say one thing, you know, you credit to Filip Hrgovic. The guy's a warrior, man. You know, the doctor stopped the fight. Hrgovic didn't take a knee, didn't get knocked down. That was because of doctor's orders. And Filip Hrgovic 100% comes again. I mean, look how well Daniel Dubois has improved since losing his first fight. I'm telling you now, Hrgovic will improve as well. He's a good fighter and he's a good professional athlete. But Dubois last night, on another level, so much has improved. Don Charles has done a great job with him.
Gained a lot from that.
Yes, exactly, and the sky's the limit. So yeah, look, sky's the limit for Triple D, Daniel Dynamite Dubois, and now obviously, just like the other guys, we ask what's next, and there's a lot of talk about the Anthony Joshua card in Wembley in September. Is Daniel Dynamite Dubois versus Anthony Joshua the right fight next to make for Dubois' career run?
That's a very tough one. I'm thinking with my team, Daniel Dubois kind of team. You know, like, do they really want that fight, or do they want another fight that could lead up to that big fight with AJ? Do I think he beats AJ? No, I think AJ, you know, he's too good for him. But could a fight versus Zhilei Zhang, could that be a good one? Because they haven't fought each other. But then that holds up is, I'm sure he's just wanting to get involved in that heavyweight mix and get himself a world title finally. So, you know, does that bring him closer to a world title fighting Zhilei Zhang, or does that bring him closer fighting against AJ? No, you never know. That fight against AJ might be for the IBF. I have no idea what's happening with the ruling in regards to that. Because I think he deserves it. He deserves another.
He's got. Sorry to disturb you there, Ron. He's got the IBF interim world title, which could get upgraded to the full version. Obviously, depending on what happens with the IBF and whether they're going to allow Usyk an extension for the rematch with Tyson Fury.
That's the end of the year, man. I was like December the 21st. We got to wait 6 months. That belt's being held up. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I am, I love that we've got an undisputed, but there's other champions out there that we could make. There's for and against the argument of having 4 different belts, but I don't know. But yeah, sorry, continue.
I personally like the idea of him versus Parker. I think that's a great fight. I think they're 2 fighters that are
Yes, of course, yeah, Joseph Parker as well.
One more big win away from challenging for a world title. But I think, look, if Anthony Joshua is going to look to sell out Wembley, it's got to be a big name. It can't be a fighter that's below the top, that's underneath the top 5. So
do you think Dubois is that name?
Well, if you're going by rankings, 1, 2 is Usyk Fury, 3 is Joshua, 4 is Parker, and I think right now, I think Dubois. It's between Dubois and Zhang who takes that 5th and final spot. Don't forget, you still got Joe Joyce there. You still got Joe Joyce is obviously still there. You've still got Andy Ruiz who fights Jarrell Miller on the America card. So it's just a case of who really fills out that final number.
Ajit Kabayel, did you put him on that list?
I put Ajit Kabayel in the top 10, but look, there's a host of names. It's just,
of course, yeah. I mean, we're spoiled for choice right now, yeah.
But obviously, that win cemented the win for Queensberry. That meant there was all that was left to play for was pride for Matchroom, and it wasn't meant to be. Zhilei Zhang wrapped up the night, wrapped up the whitewash with a knockout victory over the bronze bomber Deontay Wilder, and that moved it to 10-0, and that's all she wrote for Matchroom Boxing. But we have to obviously talk about the final fight of the night, which was Zhang and Wilder. And listen, congratulations to Zhilei Zhang. I didn't think he performed well. I thought it was a fight that we expected not to last no longer than 4 rounds. I think it didn't even get started till the actual knockout. I don't think it was a great fight. But nonetheless, it is a win for Zhang, and it keeps him in the mix, and potentially it does push him towards that September fight with Anthony Joshua, depending on who they go for next. But we'll talk about Zhang's winning a bit. But Ron, is it fair to say that this is the end of Deontay Wilder now?
Sadly, everything good must come to an end. Deontay Wilder has given us some amazing nights, performances. I remember me and you watching his fight against Luis Ortiz. Like, wow, what a cliffhanger that was. He was against Brazil. His fights against Fury. The most fearsome knockout artists, in the heavyweight division. And look at the size of the guy in comparison to the guys that he's putting on the floor. And it was sad, I mean, we've seen this decline in the last few fights. He's lost, 4 of his last 5 fights? Is that right? Is that some sort of statistics that we've seen?
Only win was against Robert Helenius. That's it.
Yes. I was listening to Teddy Atlas, and I love Teddy Atlas, and I think if anyone knows boxing, it's him. And he said, look, these fighters left a lot of themselves in that ring. I mean, he's talking about Fury and Wilder, and he was doing like a preview of the fight against Zhang, and I said this in my prediction that he's taken a lot of beating in the last few fights against Joseph Parker. He didn't lose, he didn't get dropped, but he almost, it was good as, he was, out fought in that fight. He couldn't land his punches. And sadly, that was a case against Zhilei Zhang. He was on the back foot. He wasn't taking that center of that position. He was getting bullied by Zhilei Zhang. Those big, heavy punches. I go, look, there's only so long you can keep a guy like that off. And, sadly, Deontay Wilder is not known for his stamina or, that second wind where he will come on once, Zhilei Zhang starts tiring out. So I thought the best way of victory for Deontay Wilder was early, get him out early and land your punches. but it just looked like he was thinking too much about it or too long about it, and the moment had gone where he needed to kind of tee off on Zhilei Zhang. And, Zhilei Zhang's not the quickest. He's a big target, 41 years of age, or 39 or 40 years of age, but he's a big unit. So, but let's give credit to Zhilei Zhang. He came off. He lost against Joseph Parker? Is that recently, or Zhilei Zhang, or what was his last performance? Yeah. So, but yeah, but Zhilei Zhang, I predicted would win that fight, and it's sad. I am sad that I hope for his sake that this is the last of Deontay Wilder, fighting for in the heavyweight division. But there wasn't a post-fight interview, was there? I don't recall one after the fight. Deontay wasn't there, but Zhilei Zhang was. What did you make of it? What did you make of the stoppage? What did you make of the fight? Do you think it went how you thought it would go? And what did you think of the stoppage itself? It was a bit odd that he would stop. And yeah, I didn't know what. It just came out of a surprise that it came in that fashion.
Well, during the build-up, I mean, I remember when Eddie announced Wilder as part of the team and as captain, and he said, "I've been sat in a room with him, and I see a look in his eye, and I believe we've got the old Wilder back." And listening to Eddie Hearn say that, I was actually rather excited to hear that, because the heavyweight division thrives on its big punches.
Did you predict him to win? Sorry, let me just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, fine.
And I thought we were going to get the old Deontay Wilder. I thought Wilder was going to come out and just throw that right hand. And it's as if that he was fighting with that right hand tied behind his back. And when he eventually did let it go, it just wasn't like watching the old Wilder. It's very sad to see. Yes, I do believe the 3 fights with Tyson Fury took its toll on him. The ring inactivity has played a part. I mean, under Malik Scott, and I'm not knocking Malik Scott. I think he's a good coach. I think he's a good trainer. He's just
look at the record as together. I mean,
yeah, but
I totally appreciate that. Yeah.
Let me just. I mean, if you look at it, right, 10 rounds with Tyson Fury in the 3rd fight, 1 round with Robert Helenius, a full 12 rounds against Joseph Parker, and however many rounds it was last night. I've given him 2 rounds in total that he's won under Malik Scott, and one of those rounds is the fight against Tyson Fury when he dropped him twice in round 4 in the 3rd fight. So that, I mean, I found it strange that he weighed in heavy, his career heaviest against Tyson Fury for the 3rd fight. You could tell that played its part in that fight. It's just not worked with Malik Scott. And Eddie Hearn said something last night when he done his interview with Boxing Social. Shout out to Boxing Social. He said that there was a time when every heavyweight feared Deontay Wilder. Nobody fears him anymore, and I 100% could not agree any less. I could not agree anymore. It's just like he's so stale. It's just he looks lost in the ring. Do I think that's the end of Deontay Wilder? He's not far off making bridgerweight, and he could certainly probably even make cruiserweight. However, he's taken a lot of punishment over the last few years, and it's sad to see, man, because he was so exciting, and that right hand, you just knew at any second it was going to land. No matter who he was fighting, he was always going to land. He was always going to, use that kryptonite of his, which is what I call it. But last night, it was a lot worse than the Parker performance. It's just sad to see, and I do think that's the end of him. But I don't know, man. Look, there's something not right with the guy. Something's really gone wrong. I mean, there was a lot of rumors on social media about issues with his wife and issues with family members. I'm a full believer, right, that as you get older, you lose perhaps maybe your speed, and you lose your footwork and your energy. But I never believe you lose your power. I can't understand how a guy who's that
what about punch resistance?
Yeah,
yeah, you lose that. I mean, he's taking some.
Ron, you don't lose your power, though. This is what I'm trying to say, and I can't get my head around how the guy's lost that kryptonite overnight. It's just it doesn't seem right. A guy with his power, it's just doesn't want to throw that right hand anymore.
Yeah, but maybe you've got to give it to maybe fighters have worked him out. You know,
Well,
they know
there's
that
not much.
about
There's not much to work
what
out
kind
with
of
Wilder. His footwork is
yeah,
terrible.
that's it. I mean, he wasn't blessed. I mean, that wasn't his
But
boxing.
do
You
you
know,
know, sorry, Ron,
he
I'm gonna
wasn't blessed
disturb
with.
Ron. I'm gonna disturb you one more time. And I do apologize. We seem to be forgetting one thing. The guy's an Olympic bronze medalist. He's got amateur background, and technically he is poor. So I don't know, man. But I do think it's the end of Deontay Wilder. I don't think he fights again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it, and I think for your health, you know, that's really important. That he doesn't need to. He's probably a very, very wealthy man. You know, he was a WBC champion for how long? You know, his knockout reels that he had. You know, he had his good run going, and then obviously the 3 fights with Tyson Fury, which we've spoken about, and you know, we're blessed. You know, we were very lucky to have him in the boxing. In our boxing era, you know, growing up, you know, we were desperate to see that fight with not only obviously we saw the Fury fight, but I really wanted to see him with AJ. I remember there was a point where people said, "Yeah, he wiped the floor with AJ, wipes the floor with AJ." I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, which you know, that's what everyone's predictions were. But times change, man. You know, time waits for no man, and obviously Deontay Wilder. I think maybe that working with Malik Scott, working on the fundamentals and the boxing, was that the wrong move? You know, should they just stuck to what he was really, really good at and just kind of sharpen those skills and make the, you know, because that's what made Deontay Wilder special. That ferocious kind of, you know, out of the bag, surprise, bang, you know, what he did against Luis Ortiz. It's got him out of trouble so many times, but I think he's probably chips just run out. You know, and yeah, maybe, you know, this is where we need to say goodbye. He needs to say goodbye to boxing. I think he's earned that right. Do I see him at Bridgerweight?
Zhang. What do we do next with Zhilei Zhang? I think it's fair to say Wilder calls it a day, but what does Zhang do next?
Okay, look, credit where it's due, man. You know, Zhilei Zhang, brilliant, well done. He's a big name. I'd love to see him headlining a show in China. You know, like let's take boxing there and make it. You know, it's big in you know, we've got US, you got the UK, you know, and Saudi now. There's a massive market out there. You know, let's get him headlining against a really good opponent. You know, if the world titles get broken up even more, let's put a belt out there for him to fight for. Who can we put him in with? Daniel Dubois as one I mentioned. And AJ, you know, if you really wanted to do that out there, I mean, I'm sure the Chinese will pay a lot of money for that. You got Ajit Kabayel, who's come off some really, really, really impressive performances, but I don't know if that sells. You know, yeah, that's a great fight. I mean, as a boxing, you know, enthusiast like, you know, like us, we would love that because we know what they both bring in. Is he ahead of Daniel Dubois in the queue? Is he ahead of? I would say he's not ahead of Joseph Parker because Joseph Parker's recently beaten him. So there you go. Or, you know, there's obviously the Hrgovic rematch that he could have.
Well, we've seen it once. I don't think it's a fight fans would look forward to seeing.
I mean, I'm just throwing names out there. I mean, if you can think of any other names that I've missed out on.
I mean, look, we're forgetting Andy Ruiz could throw his name back into the mix if he can beat
Andy Ruiz. Come on, man, he hasn't fought for how long?
Yeah, but he's got a fight coming up. He's beating Luis Ortiz.
Massive inactivity. I'm sorry, no, Andy Ruiz is not as serious in this conversation right now. I mean, Jarrell Miller has fought more recently than him. I'm massively disappointed. He's fought twice since he's lost to Joshua. Is that right? I think that's a stupid statistic like that.
Yeah.
And when did that fight happen? He's still living off that memory, you know. And I saw a documentary where he was really open and honest about it. And he's just like, look, I was just, that's another conversation for another day. But Zhilei Zhang. So yeah, I've got to named you quite a few opponents there. So I hope I want the boxing sport to grow, and taking it to China, giving him a card that he's headlining. That would be a fantastic move for Turki Alalshikh and Frank Warren.
Well, look, I mean, I think Zhilei Zhang, there's Dubois, Dillian White, we seem to forget about.
William White as well, yeah, that's not a bad shout.
Ajit Kabayel. If you look at what Turki Alalshikh is doing, he loves his heavyweight boxing. So, there's Otto Wallin as well. Don't forget, there's Frank Sanchez. There's some big fights out there. I'm not too sure what they do next with Zhang. But in terms of the Zhang Dubois Joshua mix, I do believe Joshua will fight Dubois next. And for Zhang, I'm not too sure about his next move. Had Wilder won the fight, we all knew we was going to get Wilder Joshua at Wembley. Well, I mean, Turki Alalshikh said that's the fight he wanted, but it would just be ludicrous to put Wilder in with Joshua in September, because this Deontay Wilder right now gets nowhere near any of the top heavyweights. He's not even beating guys outside of the top 5. Sad to see, but if he does call it a day, listen, defended the WBC title on, I believe, on more than 10 occasions. Gave me my favorite trilogy of all time with Tyson Fury. Great fights against Luis Ortiz. Some of the most devastating knockouts I've seen in boxing. An Olympic bronze medalist. Enjoy your time in retirement, Deontay, if you do call it a day. But it will be sad to see, because not the way he would have wanted to end his career. But that win made it 10-0 to Queensberry. They won the series. Saw Frank Warren do a bit of a video, him saying 10-0, 10-0, there's nowhere to go. It's over. And then obviously you see Eddie Hearn put a video up of them on the plane today. Frank Warren just slating him like, yeah, I'm in row 5. We've got a 5-hour delay. But the good thing is they're all working together. But let's just review the relationship and obviously the concept of the tournament. What would you do next? I mean, would you want to maybe put Boxer in the mix for one of these 5 versus 5 cards, or Top Rank, or Oscar De La Hoya's the boy promotions? I mean, it's a big market out there, Ron.
Massively. You capitalize. As you make, we've seen Matchroom and Queensberry. Let's do a US versus UK. That would be great. You could do so much. You could Boxer. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what their trajectory is and how they're going about their business. They've got a different model, which me and you have spoken about. They're kind of building up their platform still. They haven't got a high level of fighters that either Matchroom or Queensberry has. So that might be a bit more of a difficult sell. But they've got a few fighters on their roster that could, obviously get you on the edge of their seats. But they're still in their early infancy. So I'd like to see, US versus UK kind of undercards. Some of the American fighters that I don't know of. I'd love to hear their names and make the sport even bigger.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think Lawrence Cody put up a post last night. It was in Riyadh, and he said he likes the boxers' chances against Queensberry and Matchroom. So, look, Turki Alalshikh is definitely going to want to try and trigger all these boxing promotions. And there's a piece of the pie out there for every promoter in this boxing game, especially with the millions that Turki Alalshikh is putting into boxing. And exciting times ahead. Great concept. Congratulations to Queensberry. Hard luck for Matchroom. I'm sure they'll come again. I'm sure Eddie will want to avenge his defeat at some point in the future. We'll talk about the fight that never impacted last night's scorecard. It was meant to be the undisputed fight between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, but Beterbiev pulled out the fight due to injury a few months ago. And in stepped in Malik Zinad, who I actually thought put up a decent performance. Got Bivol out of his comfort zone, and Bivol won the fight, and it was his first knockout victory in 6 years. But listen, I think it's fair to say that if you're Beterbiev right now, you'd want to try and maybe look. He's miles ahead of this Zinad guy who fought last night. But if Beterbiev can get Bivol in that type of fight that we saw last night. Beterbiev, you'd have to fancy him with his power and, of course, his knockout ratio. But what did you make of Bivol last night, Ron? Because I thought there was a few times he looked a bit uncomfortable and he looked a bit frustrated as well.
I thought I like the confidence in Zinad. You know, he came into this fight, got nothing to lose, undefeated. He doesn't know how to lose either. And I love that we didn't show him too much respect.
Yeah.
Used his jab really well, very low hands. And I thought he was boxing really well. I was like, hold on a minute. Is this something, you know, this isn't part of the script? You know, this is supposed to be a walkover. Bivol's going to, you know, really put the foot on the gas, and you're getting beaten to the punch quite often. But I guess, you know, if you're a pound for pound, that class is going to shine through at some point. And he landed, you know, the crucial punch that kind of was it stopped or was it a TKO? Or I couldn't remember if it was it a So, you know, I hope on the back of that, I think Zinad, obviously he's involved in more of these kind of fights, and I love that they kind of done someone of that background
Libyan
on that
background, yeah.
You know, like the Arab background, you know, like we need to promote that. I mean, that's what the Saudis, I'm sure that's one of their initiatives, is to build up the profile of Arab boxers, as well as obviously international fights. And, you know, that's you know, that's going to be part of their goal, in my opinion. So I think Turki
Alalshikh said he's going to have him on more shows when Riyadh season begins again.
Good. I'm really happy for that. Look, the guy stepped in with a pound for pound, you know, like he's probably up there in the top 10, top 5. I don't know. Depends on your opinion. And he gave a good account of himself. You know, there's small margin for error in these, you know, in these kind of fights when you're finding at that level. And this Zinad probably not fought anyone anywhere close to that. But I think he boxed really well. I think his jab was really good, as we said. So, and he was giving him problems. You know, he wasn't, you know, Bivol wasn't able to land or set anything up. So, but he got his first knockout. I mean, I'm surprised that he doesn't get many knockouts.
It was good to see Bivol in that sort of environment where it's not going to be a fight where he's going to win due to boxing his way through the 12 rounds. I'm glad somebody went in there and asked questions of him. And listen, that is what Beterbiev's going to do when it does happen. The fight obviously got announced for October 12th to kick off Riyadh season. Again, more magic work by Turki Alalshikh. What a way to kick off Riyadh season. And obviously back to Beterbiev. He's not going to go there and try and box his way to win. He's going to try and knock Bivol out. It's what he's done in all of his fights. Now, we saw Zinad have a bit of success last night, but there's a massive difference between Zinad and Beterbiev. We all know Beterbiev is a wrecking ball. He's destructive. He's explosive. Where does Bivol need to brushing up in going into that fight? I'll be honest with you. I think about a year ago, after when Beterbiev fought Anthony Yarde, I said to myself, Bivol beats Beterbiev quite comfortably. But now, after seeing last night, and look, I'm not boiling it down to the fact that because he got caught quite a few times last night. I'm just saying I can't see Bivol keeping Beterbiev quiet for 12 rounds. I can't see it happening. And I can't see Bivol outboxing him. I think Bivol has to fight fire with fire in this fight. But does Bivol have the power to stop Beterbiev? You know, you look at who he's fought. He's fought Callum Smith. He's fought Anthony Yarde. You know, these are big hitters from the UK. You know, Callum Johnson managed to put him down, and he still got back up and finished the fight inside the distance. I want to ask you something now, Ron. What do you do to beat Beterbiev if you're in Bivol's corner right now? Which way do you set up tactically against Beterbiev on October the 12th?
I mean, do you outbox him?
I don't think you can hold him off for 12 rounds. That's me being
exactly. Or do you try to fight fire with fire and put him on the back foot, put the pressure on him, not let him fight his fight? I mean, that's the generic answer I can probably give you. But I admire that Turki Alalshikh's been desperately trying to get this fight that we won. You know, these two are the best of the division. You know, Beterbiev has beaten some top level fighters, you know, in that division to get to where they're at. we're almost there. They've agreed to fight. It's not even that. It's just sadly we've had an injury that's kind of denied us that, and we've just got to have to wait another 4 or 5 months for that, which is yeah. I mean, look, I think yes, you pointed out that he did struggle at times and he did get but he probably appreciate the outing. To be honest, he probably was good. He got a few rounds in. What would he have gained if he dropped him? He finished it in the first round. He's been probably in camp training for the better. Yeah. So
he almost did finish.
I think it was probably a good thing that he probably. Yeah. So it's probably good that he's got that opportunity to get a few rounds under his belt. Maybe he took it that way. That his whole. I mean, how many weeks' notice did Zinad come? Is it 3 or 4 weeks?
I think a month's notice.
Not that much notice, was it? Is that month's notice? Okay, fine. I mean, they're completely two different fighters. They're nothing alike. So I guess that could be unsettling. How he had Beterbiev that he was performing, preparing for. So, and then all of a sudden this Zinad character comes in and, he has to completely change up his training schedule or, what he's focusing on. So, look, he's got the win. So let's go from there really. And then hopefully we'll see that epic fight we're looking forward to. Will age catch up with Beterbiev? Will injuries catch up with Beterbiev? So there's those question marks there as well. So it'll be an intriguing matchup nonetheless. Styles make fights. So, both of them have their strengths. Obviously, boxing. If I had to say the box, is it the boxer versus the brawler in this scenario?
That's exactly what I was just about to say. Well,
So
it makes for a great fight, and what a way to kick off Riyadh season. Two the pound for pound kings, both undefeated, fighting for undisputed supremacy. And it's all down to one man. These fights are happening, and listen, I think with Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia now coming to an end, got to pay tribute to Turki Alalshikh. What phenomenal job he's done, and it's just the beginning as well. And listen, we're on to bigger and better things, and we're not even halfway through 2024, and it's been a great year of boxing so far, and long may it continue. Ron, anything else you want to add, mate?
No, I mean we're still got some boxing events coming up. I'm looking forward to the Chris Smith fight. So that's the next one. We've been very fortunate this year. 2024 has been excellent for boxing. So I want to see how the rest of the year pans out. What other fights we're going to get. So really happy, as a fan. I'm glad it's keeping up with MMA. There was that kind of criticism. So
we're on to bigger and better things right now. The sport is alive. It's delivering the best fights. We're having these special tournaments. Great time to be a boxing fan. That is all we've got time for today for podcast number 80. Ron, thank you very much. Pleasure as always. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all ours, Ron. To the viewers out there, if you sound a bit like Les Dennis, don't I? To the viewers out there, if you haven't already, please make sure. Can remind the viewers at home, if you hear any of the sounds, no, I'm joking. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment, smash the bell for more Lights Out Boxing content. Links for our social media platforms are below in the description. And be sure to check out our sponsors, Spartans Law. If you need any advice going in the courtrooms or outside of the courtrooms, we are proudly sponsored by the #1 law firm in the UK right now. And make sure to check out this podcast on all the audio platforms in the description. Thank you very much for listening to podcast 80 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.